You see, the thing about our job is it's not all Phil and Kirsty, and neither are we, although it actually has been mentioned a time or two that I really, really like Phil and Kirsty. Love location, and I don't normally like things that are part of the industry you're in. Don't even get me started on these millionaire agents in London at the moment. It's just the most ghastly thing going. I do like them, but it doesn't deal with the whole of what we do. And if you've ever bought or sold a property with me, I've probably quoted that to you at some stage when you realise that what we do is far more complicated than what they do on TV. They select some properties, that's fun. Oh, I think I found the right property for a client. They then go and view them, which is always an enjoyable experience, the comments and what have you. And then there's a bit of negotiation in the pub. Kirsty usually with a gin, Phil with his half of local bitter, and lo and behold, they end up at agreeing a price halfway between what they offered and what it was on for. What it doesn't show you is all of the problems after that with all of the conveyance and the issues there associated. We're not going to talk about that bit today. What we are going to talk about, though, is the bit before that about preparing the property and indeed preparing the client coming to the market. And we have decided to set up a series of home selling workshops. It's based a lot on the things we do anyway, the things we have talked about in some of the other podcasts. So you'll recognise some topics. And we've just decided to pull them all together with a series of workshops to help people coming to the market. Not necessarily coming to market tomorrow, but somebody next year, year after, just wanting to get a better idea of what they're doing. So focusing on the preparation. It's a webinar, not a webinar. It will be a workshop. We're going to do them for real, but we're probably going to do the first one virtually just because of the time of year and it's a bit grotty and a bit horrible. So we'll probably do the first one virtually just to get a feel for it and then do them for real.
Which is so much better because you can sit back, have a glass of wine, that gin, or that half a pint.
Yep.
And enjoy the chat.
We'll be remaining sober, but virtually, we'll be inviting people to bring whatever they're talking about, whatever they're drinking at the time.
Absolutely.
That's going to be the format. It's going to be informal, but giving people a lot of information. It was partly your idea. It was us chatting a couple of weeks ago, and you said, "Why don't we do this?" And created the idea. So,
well, yes, you and I spoke, and we were quite frustrated at the fact that a lot of homeowners feel that all they need to do is call a local agent, come in, see who gives them the best price and valuation and who has the best fee. And we then realized that, hang on a minute, there needs to be preparation done. And I think that's where we're very different to Phil and Kirsty. I absolutely love that show. And I think what they are doing is absolutely amazing. I do feel, though, that with what we do, it is so important for homeowners to understand that we are there to help you prepare your home before it goes onto the market. And there's various different things we do. And you've done this for many, many years, more than I have, in fact, what the most frustrating parts of doing the job is.
The interesting thing as well is, this was something we also talked about, was that it's only sometimes at the end of the experience that the homeowner, particularly, because they're the ones who we do most of the work with, they're the ones who pay our fee in 99% of circumstances, they've often said at the end of it, I didn't realise quite how much you do. And it's not about the marketing and about how, turning up on a cold day, doing a video outside the house. It's the amount of work ahead of it to make sure we get it right, and the amount of work we do during the sales progression period as well. And I'm thinking we're obviously undervaluing and underselling ourselves if at the end of it people say, wow, I didn't realise you did that much. So it's partly to make people realise there is more involved, but it's not bigging us up. It's actually to help you, whenever you're ready to sell your house, be better prepared to do that. So should we crack on with a few of the ideas that we're going to talk about within the workshops themselves?
Yes, absolutely.
So the first one is that word that will bring joy to some and make other people shudder, which is the declutter word. Finally, it's a chance to get rid of the husband's train set or whatever else it may be.
Oh, Adrian.
Now, decluttering has a lot of different levels to which you can do it. We're talking here mostly about a visual declutter. So it's the clearing of work surfaces. It's the depersonalizing some of the space quite a bit. So if there's too many family photos, not for you living in the house, but for somebody to view it, just dumbing those down a bit. Nobody wants to see your perfume collection in the bathroom. A couple of them, yes, they don't want to see the variety of perfumes. It's just taking the owner a little bit out of the house so that somebody can see themselves in the house and see themselves living there, not walk around this museum to the people owning it. And that's not criticising the way you live in it. It's about making the very best of it when you bring it to the market.
Absolutely. It is a case of respecting their home. But as you rightfully said, it's so that the buyer can come in and view the property with a little bit more of an open canvas.
Yeah. And also by removing some bits of furniture, some bits of decoration, people can see the house.
That's right.
It's great if you've got a house with interesting furniture, some interesting pieces, a jukebox, a vinyl collection, which, I would say, look at that. Great to have some interest in it, but not for it to dominate, so people don't really see the house as well. Ideally, it would not be a shoved in every wardrobe and every cupboard declutter, because then when people are looking at what space there is, they'll think, gosh, this house isn't very big because every door I open is full of stuff. So it would be hopefully boxed, put in a garage, put in a storage unit, and those are the things we can advise on. There is another level to declutter, and you're going to run this, a workshop in the new year about a real declutter. We're talking about really taking a lot of stuff out of your life, and it could even be a declutter of a phone where you get rid of half of the apps on your phone that you use once a year. I did that a couple of weeks ago. It's brilliant. I know that if I've taken that app off, I can put it back on again in about 1 minute, but why is it cluttering all the screen, multiple screens on my page? I've got back to 2, which are the ones I use every day. If I suddenly want to get another one back, you're going to run that, and that's going to be brilliant. And that's for homeowners, not home sellers, really, just to help them.
Well, that's true. I think at the end of the day, as you said, comparing it to an app on the phone is very similar. And a lot of people will sit back and say, but Adrian and Candice, I can't just add back those things I've packed away as simply as one click of a button. But here's the thing, with cleaning up your home, decluttering, packing away what you don't need, what you won't be using for that season or perhaps that year, it does make you feel so much lighter. It creates more space for you to do so much more in your home. It's wonderful. It does so much for your mental health. It's unbelievable.
One thing Candice was talking about is the 4-box thing about declutter. And one of the boxes that isn't an ideal box but is an important box is the maybe. Because without the maybe box, then you won't declutter. So if you are uncertain whether it's throw away, repurpose, sell or give away or keep or move to another room, there will be the maybe box. And you do need that. And then the maybe box has to be revisited. But yeah, looking forward to that. That is a part of staging and showcasing, which we're huge about. I know we need to do it. You have a better eye for it. And that's something we've done with all of our properties so far. So that's something we'll add to this as well. What are the key bits about staging and showcasing that you'd want to tell people about why it works and why it's important to them?
So if you've got a home, and this is the way I always look at it, if you've got a home that has a lot of potential interior-wise, but it lacks a little bit of softness, warmth, let's say colour, that's where I would come in after you've done the decluttering and help make your home look more inviting perhaps. It might be inviting to you, but not necessarily to the buyer. So it's very, very important to think like a buyer. When you walk into a home, what would you like to see? You want to see that home is inviting, that it is practical, yes, but that it has got that potential. So what we do is we would bring along scatter cushions perhaps, basically fluffing up your home, a throw here and there, a vase of flowers.
You used to throw on a sofa on Monday at a...
That's right.
Where there was this perfectly good sofa, but filmed, it looks incredibly plain.
And it stands out too much.
Changed the room completely.
That's it. So that sofa stood up way too much. And you couldn't really focus on the actual room itself.
Yeah.
So you've got to be very clever with how you coordinate your colours, how you do things.
Yeah.
So it's creating a bit of a balance. So warmth, balance, and of course, you need to make sure that there is a certain type of smell in the home that is very subtle, but that people will remember when they walk in.
The other thing as well, I mean, we do this as part of our open houses. We music's playing, hard to convey on a photo, but we do things that create a warmth in the property. We'll put a fire on if it's in the winter, logically. The other thing as well, if we need to take it to another level, because the property really does have no real style and panache, we can take it to another level with an actual interior designer. Karen was on a previous podcast talking very much about this. So we have, particularly Candice has good skills, but when it goes to another level, we'll bring in the absolute professional. And if you haven't seen that podcast, have a look for the one that's about showcasing with Karen Chapman at Renaissance, because that talks about this and the examples we've used in that. So we'll also then look at, a little bit before we do that, repairs and work to be done to the house. And these are obvious visual things that any buyer will notice. And if they don't notice it on the first viewing, they'll notice it on a second viewing. And even if they don't notice it, ultimately their surveyor will notice it. So and I saw one of these not long ago, a really good house when I went in and looked at it, but the garden gate was just old and decrepit. And they said, oh, well, we've just never got round to doing it. But it's the very first thing you see and touch as you're walking down the pathway. And the problem with that, it's not a case of, oh, I need £300 for a new gate, I need to find somebody to repair it and varnish it or paint it. It makes people subconsciously think, if that is so visually poor, what's going on behind the walls? What's the boiler like? What are the electrics like? And it just starts to make people think, And it's just really important to avoid those obvious things that somebody might think are going to cause a problem. When you've lived in a house for quite a long time, you become a bit blind to them.
It's very true.
You become accepting of the the door handle that doesn't quite work properly, but somebody using it for the first time, somebody trying to close a door that doesn't close properly. All those little things can have quite a big impact.
It matters.
Yeah,
it really does matter.
Because it just makes people think, if this is what I can see that isn't quite right. And we're not suggesting for any second that you then completely revamp and redo your home. If your home is going to be a complete refurb, there's no point doing any of that work. But we're talking about a good home that the owners think is in really good condition. We're going to say, but you have forgotten this, and this. And if you do those little jobs now with plenty of prep time, not a week before it goes on the market, you can get all those little jobs done.
I have a question for you, Adrian.
Oh, okay.
And
I worry when you ask me questions.
Would you think it would be an advisable thing for a homeowner to do would be to contact a surveyor perhaps, before the property even goes on the market, so that homeowner can understand if there's anything that they need to start sorting out and fixing, so that when their home does have interest and a surveyor does come in, that all those small problems or issues that have been flagged, obviously it affects the selling price, but being prepared in advance, do you think that's a good idea?
It's a brilliant idea. Years back, I wasn't doing estate agency, so I can't remember the date of HIPS. We talked about this with Robert on the conveyancing one about. I think we will soon, within my working life, probably get to a point where an owner has to do what they wanted to do a few years back, which is get a survey done, have a legal pack ready to go, so that the timeframes we deal with and people know what they're buying. If you're selling a car, you have warranties. If you're selling so many things, and yet suddenly this house can just be shoved on the market by an estate agent with lovely words and pictures, but nothing of the nitty-gritty.
There's been no preparation done.
One thing that I was talking to Robert about after that, off air, though he's not a surveyor, he's a solicitor, and I then have spoken to one of our surveyors. I don't think a lot of homeowners will pay £1,000, £1,500 before selling the property to get their survey done. What I think, and this is something we are now working on with one of our surveyors, is for the surveyor to go round and not sign off a legal insurance-backed survey that is representing the buyer, that the buyer could fall back on.
And that costs.
Yeah, and a lot of the cost of the survey isn't for the time the guy's gone there, it's the insurance policy that if something else comes up, you can sue the surveyor. We're talking about the idea that the same surveying company go in on behalf of the owner and in a more informal way say, these are the things that if I was surveying this today for a buyer, I would be flagging up. There'll be 100 other things noted about the condition of this and the condition of that, but these are the 6 things that will come up: your flat roof, your twisted beam in the roof, your there's some damp in that corner, your retaining wall in the garden. Big highlight issues, which the owner is then empowered. And there's 2 things about that. One is they know they've got an issue that they could deal with and pay for, but they may not want to, but at least they know what needs to be done and get it quoted. Because quite a lot of research, particularly for Keller Williams research, has shown that buyers overestimate those costs. So the retaining wall might cost £3,000 to do. A buyer's thinking, £8,000-10,000. So either get it done or get it quoted. All of it prepares. That's what we're looking at. One of the things we're looking at really right now.
And that includes the legal pack too, being prepared in advance.
Yeah, again, that goes back to the chat with Robert, and that's something we can do. I think it ought to be, as an industry, more formalised.
Yes.
And I think searches ought to be mutually, can be used by both parties rather than this standoff we have with solicitors. But it's all part of that. How can you make something that's difficult and complicated and stressful more easy? And that's the whole part of these home selling workshops. We won't touch on the legal a lot in these workshops. This is more about the property, but the legals are all part of that whole thing. Marketing. I don't think we want to bore people with what we keep talking about all the time about that we do, a higher level of marketing, because we put a lot of our money into that rather than into having an office in a high street, which people don't view anymore. So what would you point out particularly about marketing for people individually that we would then look at doing by knowing them and their property better?
Well, what comes to mind, if I had to compare it to a movie, it would be Mary Poppins with a big bag, who comes in and only takes out what is necessary and what is needed to make that marketing magic happen with the property.
Only you could start talking about Mary Poppins. Okay, so you've got this bag of all the things we can do in marketing, which is, I think, extensive and better done, but you don't use everything. Is that what you're saying?
Well, 100%. It depends. So, for example, if you've got a terrace property, why would we have a drone shot done of your home? It's a terraced property.
Because we are telling everybody that we do drone shots because we're amazing.
And I think
it'd be a waste of time.
Personally, I think it's a waste of time unless you've got a lovely detached property on a massive piece of land, or you are selling an actual farm. Then yes, a drone shot comes in handy.
Well cottage is definitely common. Yeah.
Because that, again, when you look at well cottage, it is a case of you are on the land right there, the common land, which you can go for miles with your dog and your children for a walk.
Yep.
Then it's worth it. And then, of course, videos of the property. Majority of clients keep asking us, well, will you be doing a video tour of our home? If the home is too small, for example, a small semi-detached or small detached or even terraced home, there is just no point doing it, because you will not really see what the property potentially looks like in terms of size on a video.
We find quite often some of the comments, even though our photography is brilliant, the amount of times I show a property, and I'm sure you have the same feedback, where somebody says, God, this looks bigger than it really is, on video, because we've done those videos, and it's easy to do them in some of the big open plan rooms and big bedrooms where they look amazing. But we've done them on smaller properties which have been in really good condition, and you've looked at it and thought, gosh, this looks really, really small, because you've got a video camera that's only a metre away from a wall and only sort of 3 metres away from the next wall. Perfectly good room, because it's a cottage with a snug with 2 sofas and a log burning stove. Just doesn't work on video. So that's a really good point.
And that's why we create almost like an online catalogue, so to speak.
So the important thing here then, the message about the workshop is, when we get to know you, and in this instance your property, we know which tools we're going to use.
100%. It's customised.
Customised.
Yeah,
that's definitely the way. Pricing and timing is probably another thing that we will always talk about. Timing is something that people don't think about, because again, we're talking about the analogy of somebody says, I am now ready to sell, phone an agent, 2 weeks later it's on the market. That's the amount of timing they've thought about. Pricing wise, pricing a property isn't an exact science. It's a strategy. We're in a market at the moment where we are in a very much a buyer's market. 15 months ago, we were in a seller's market where the strategy might be how far can we push this price? We're in a buyer's market at the moment where we are having to suppress those expectations, otherwise people will sit on the market. So it's a strategy. I could be very up to date with exactly what's going on in the market and in that area, but the very first time I see that property, there is still going to be a little bit of a margin of it could be that, it could be that. And getting that wrong can be sometimes be quite difficult, quite awkward for the owner. The more we know about the property, go and see it, and then we're reviewing it a few months later because you're not going to come on until next year. All of the data we look at, all of the similar properties that may come up for sale in the meantime, we can really analyse those, and so can you as the homeowner, and say, oh, that one didn't sell for as much as we thought, maybe our expectation should come down a bit, or that one did, and maybe it goes up. And you just have all of that live research, more thoughts about the property. Some of the works that we've talked about get done. Some of the decluttering gets done. We go back and say, hey, this is actually now really looking good, and it starts to improve price levels. That all comes from preparation, comes from having time in advance to look at it, and that's going to be really, really important in those workshops.
Preparation helps to take away that massive stress a lot of homeowners have.
Yeah.
It is very stressful to choose the right agent. It's very stressful to get everything ready to then have an open house or a viewing done within 2 weeks of that home being instructed by the agent.
Well, you make compromises straight away.
You do. And I think it's homeowners generally just want to have their time and their space respected. It doesn't matter how desperate they are to sell. Those are the two things they need to have respected, is their time and their space. It's very important.
We talked about timing within the market as well. So now that can sometimes be determined by the property market. Supply and demand issues may suggest that now is the right time to put that property on the market if there's not very many of them available of that particular type, and vice versa. There could be seasonal reasons for selling, but it's important to remember that not everybody should come on the market in May when the leaves are green. And there are some properties right now in the early parts of autumn, preferably not with storms and rain howling, that can look amazing at this time of year.
Oh yes, those cosy cottages, Adrian,
with the fireplace.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So it isn't always a case of I'm going to wait for the trees to be green, because your property may not suit that. And if everybody did that, then simple economics of supply and demand mean you've suddenly got hundreds of properties on the market at the same time, and the same number of buyers. So there's those little issues, and of course there's the big personal issues. And however well we get to know a client, it's sometimes only part way through the sale process that they reveal something that has triggered the timing, and it might be something that's very personal to them about health, or maybe their own financial position that they don't want to reveal to a stranger, even if you're working for them. If you've known the homeowner for a while and have worked through all of this in advance, they open up to you, and the more you open up, we remain completely confidential. Buyers don't need to know, but we can then advise them properly because we know why July next year is a critical date. We've got clients at the moment where the schooling is critical, and it's not getting the child into school in September. It's moving by January for GCSE, for mocks for GCSEs. The most important date in their whole calendar.
It's very important, and again, that is all down to respecting what the client needs, right? So,
but also knowing what they need.
That's it.
In a new relationship with them, you're not going to get that
correct
full detail.
And what you don't want is a scrambling of what you agreed on in the beginning. It's a case of, well, I'm terribly sorry, this person wants to buy right now, so you need to all of a sudden change your timing and your plans. That, I think, is very unfair, and that's why I agree with you. It's very important to know your client, and it's very important for the client to be able to plan properly ahead of time.
And of course, we often talk about this. We'll have some workshops next month where somebody has a date in mind, and that could be a retirement date, it could be the birth of a baby date, it could be a job change. There could be an upset to that somewhere in the middle of it. Sadly, one of the things that happens is a health issue, that somebody says, I think I need to move to something that's more appropriate for lifestyle. Sadly, things like heart attacks and falling downstairs happen, and suddenly the idea that we'll get there next year is, Adrian, we need to get there now. But we've already got some of that prep done, and we can be very quick on the market. It's just being able to be, again, know the client, understand what makes them tick, and then the more they know that, the more they trust us to tell us more, and we can just do the best job, because everybody is different, every property is different, and that's something that I think does get overlooked a bit. You mentioned a very good point to me when I was talking about this. You said this gives the owner, it's still stressful, there'll still be curveballs, there'll still be things that upset it, but it gives them more sense of control and bulletproofs the transaction more.
Well, absolutely. And I think when you feel that you are in control of your own, should I say, next step, that definitely helps a hell of a lot.
Yeah.
It gives us, the agents, to do what we do best.
Yeah. And I think, as I say, there will always be issues. There'll always be a clash on completion dates. There'll be a down valuation, a bad survey. There'll be something that will come up which will still give it a wobble. This is never going to be, with the greatest preparation in the world, this is never going to be a smooth journey. But we're just trying to take out as many of those humps in the road as possible, or choppy seas as possible in that journey.
Absolutely.
A lot of these ideas have come from good data. We will use that data for the whole pricing thing, for the timing thing, but also we will compare with other colleagues who we talked last week about this. In fact, this idea has been driven by Keller Williams' colleague in America, who started to do these workshops very successfully. So there are a number of agents Keller Williams agents, who are thinking of doing these as well. We can compare as well what works, what doesn't work, and all of that data, all of the successes of the certain things we do, we'll constantly look at, but also we will keep an eye on pricing data, timing data, not national stats, but the really, really local specific things that are going on in your road, not even in your town or village, but your roads of that town and village, because Fleet, massive variation in the locations within Fleet, even in a village like Hartley Whitney, which everybody thinks, gorgeous Hartley Whitney. There are huge differences in the good and the bad within there, and indeed every other town and village local. And I think that data is important to know that what we're doing is the right thing. I think that's probably given people a good flavour for what we're going to do. It comes back to this, where we started. Well, your comment was prepare. This is the most valuable asset that 99% of people will have. There'll be a few people who are lucky enough to own 2 or 3 properties and have other investments. But for the vast majority of people, your home is your most important asset. It is also your emotional home. And the whole idea of this is that by preparing and taking really good advice, you will maximise its value and saleability whenever you need to do that. And we're very happy for somebody who wants to sell next week. I'd be much happier to take a call about somebody who wants to sell in February, because we can do all of this and it'll be a much better result for everybody. We have a date agreed.
Yes, we do.
So the first one, it's going to be a virtual one, partly because of trying to get venues, and at this time of year, a bit of pre-Christmas going on. So we're going to hold it, and we didn't want to delay it by finding the venue. We could well use Login Lounge, we could use it places in Fleet, we could use them in Cornwall where I have the other business. But the first one's going to be virtual. It's going to be on Tuesday, the 21st of November at 7:00. Don't have to take that right down. You will see it plastered all over Facebook and Instagram. And if you're on our Clubhouse, you'll get an invitation to it as well. But we're going to hold one of those. It's going to be informal, chatty. We want people to contribute to it as well. It's a workshop, not a seminar. I really am looking forward to the ones in person.
Oh, absolutely.
There'll be much more.
It'll be wonderful to engage with people.
Yeah, so everybody, I think, who comes to the virtual ones, we'll probably want them to come to the very first of the in-person ones as well. So thank you again for all of that input. Once again, only you could chuck Mary Poppins in and just about get away with it. Thanks as always for watching the Sunday Property Breakfast. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast special. I hope it illustrates what we do as a business. 90% of this is what we were already doing. We've decided, do you know what, we ought to package it together ahead of people coming on the market with us, so they get an even better chance to do what they do. And I hope you understand why we're doing that, and I look forward to seeing you online at one of the workshops. Thanks again, and we'll see you soon. Bye for now.
Hi, I'm Hayley Sims, and this is my book Dear Anonymous. It's about mental health, people's experiences that were around me and my own, and you can buy it on Amazon, Waterstones or Austin Macaulay website.